they're going to lose, so the only way they could try to get away with this is to suspend elections. They're trying to demonize the Tea Parties, the Patriots. No doubt they're staging many of these brick-through-the-window events. Democrats have been caught doing this before. There is a lot of anger out there. Violence is not the answer. Judge Napolitano, great to have you here with us.
Alex, it's a pleasure. What a fabulous intro, man. I'm riveted listening to you.
Well, we're riveted having you here. Okay, I could bring up a lot of subjects, but what's important to you right now? What's number one on your front burner?
The loss of freedom at the hands of the government, which happens with every tick of the clock. I kiddingly say in the beginning of that book, which you were very kind to mention, Alex, that when I told friends I was writing a book about the government and lies and that it was 4,000 pages long, everybody laughed and said, "Were you able to get all the lies in the 4,000 pages?" Of course, the publisher made me stop at 300 pages, but it shows you the perception that the public has is that the government does lie to us, has been lying to us, and we accept these lies and are willing to laugh about it, even though every one of those lies I talk about in the book, and even many that you just mentioned in the introduction, destroys our liberty, destroys our freedom by inducing us to make political decisions on erroneous information that the government claims is true. And when we give up this liberty and lose this property, we don't get it back.
Absolutely. When we come back, I want to get into the health care bill. I want to talk about what's next for these guys, the blanket amnesty, the national worker ID for citizens that illegals are exempt from. I've read the bill. It's the same thing in this bill, the health care bill. It talks about how we have to have an electronic medical ID card, but it says illegals are, again, exempt from that.
No surprise that they would do something like that in order, A, to control us, B, to know where we are and what we're doing, and C, to create a permanent underclass fully dependent upon them. The next thing you know is that they'll allow those folks to vote, and you know which way they'll vote, in favor of the party or the group or the candidate that gives them as big a piece of the pie to which we contribute at the point of a gun.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, the new book, Lies the Government Told You, in hardcover, hitting bookstores everywhere. Get it at Amazon.com. We'll tell you about Judge Napolitano's websites as well. We're about to go to break. Long segment coming up, and we will go through the health care bill. We will talk about the Republican Party. I mean, is there any avenue there to try to repeal all this? We'll talk about the constitutionality with our constitutional law expert, Judge Napolitano. I'm Alex Jones. The websites are Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com, and PrisonPlanet.tv. And don't forget, we also have Jesse Ventura's new book at Infowars.com. You can get it there. American Conspiracies, already number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list. We'll be right back. We're back for the rest of the hour. Judge Andrew Napolitano is our guest. The new book, Lies the Government Told You, Myth, Power, and Deception in American History. Judge, I get up here every day and rant and rave and actually cover the laws, the subsections, the bills. I give people chapter and verse, and still some call in and say, are you really telling the truth? Here's page 65 of the signed bill, and it's in section BI, eligibility for health plan. And this is the actual section of the bill, and it says, may allow for the use of a machine-readable identification card. And they have another bill where they make citizens have a national ID card to have a job, but the illegals are exempt. And you have a, 8% approval rating for Reid, 10% for Pelosi, 11% for Congress. They know that 80% of the public is against this health care takeover. We know the insurance companies wrote it. It's actually a scam. The establishment knows what they're doing is unconstitutional and lawless, but they're going ahead with it, and that's why Rush Limbaugh, and I agree with him, I'm glad he's really coming out now and telling it like it is,
right,
said that they may suspend elections because he says there's no way they can win, and that it appears they're putting in a police-state control grid. But as you know, this was all set up in the last 20, 30 years in this nation. It's bipartisan. Judge Napolitano, what is the state of our union?
The state of our union is that it is a bipartisan movement toward a police state. I mean, we don't have two parties in this country, Alex, even though most people think we do. Your listeners know that we have one party, the big government party. There's a Republican wing that likes war and deficits and assaults our civil liberties. There's a Democratic wing that likes welfare and taxes and assaults our commercial liberties. But they basically will feed each other because they're not interested in freedom. They don't believe in fidelity to the Constitution. They're just interested in power. I mean, on my radio show last month, I asked the number 3 ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives, Congressman Jim Clyburn, Congressman, where in the Constitution is the government authorized to regulate health care? And he said to me, Judge, most of what we do down here, referring to Washington, is not authorized by the Constitution. Where in the Constitution is it prohibited that we regulate health care? The very fact that he would ask that question shows a tremendous 180-degree misunderstanding of the federal government. The Congress is not a general legislature. It doesn't exist in order to right every wrong. It exists only to exercise power in 17 unique, discrete, specific, well-defined, set-out areas in a piece of paper called the Constitution, to which he took an oath to uphold. At least he was candid enough to acknowledge they're not upholding it. But what is to become of us, Alex, if the government decides the extent of its own powers, if the government freely admits it violates its oath to uphold the Constitution, and if, whenever financial or civil liberties are involved, both sides of the government, Republican and Democrat, agree. The president signs a new Patriot Act, and he signs it under cover of darkness because he's afraid those to whom he promised he wouldn't do so might see a picture of him doing it. The president, when he was a senator, blasted George W. Bush for conducting an illegal war. He's killed as many people as Bush ever did and is sending drones to Pakistan more so in 1 year than Bush did in 8. There is very little change that comes about via elections in this country unless and until people...
Well, there is very little change, Judge, and once they start violating the Bill of Rights and Constitution, the sky is the limit, as you know, as a constitutional law scholar and as a judge. But the general public is just now beginning to discover this. What about last week when they were still trying to just deem and pass this whole thing without even having the House vote on it? I mean, at least we forced them to back off of that, but that gives us a window into their lawless mindset.
Exactly. It shows us that they would cause to become law not only that which they haven't read, and we know they haven't read it because they made promises that their scriveners found out last night aren't in there, but that they haven't even voted on. At least we shamed them into voting on it. At least we know that Bart Stupak is no more pro-life than Barack Obama. At least we know where people truly stand on all of this, because the uproar from people all across the political spectrum forced them to vote. How odd and quaint, Alex, that our representatives should actually vote on something and that we should be able to know how they voted. You know, when the extension of the Patriot Act was enacted in the Senate, it was done by a voice vote so that no senator was recorded as to how he or she voted on it. And when they changed the definition of the word financial institution to mean a doctor's office, a lawyer's office, the post office, a computer server, anything under the sun which would let them serve a self-written search warrant on it, that vote was taken by voice vote, so there's no record of how anybody voted on it. At least this time we have a record. So when we want to vote the bums out, we know who the bums are.
And on top of that, we have bills in the last decade introduced to make them read the Bills Act, and they fight that tooth and nail.
That Ron Paul introduces every year 2 simple 4-line bills. Every member of Congress shall certify under oath that he or she has read a bill before voting for or against it. And every bill, this is the second one, that is introduced must cite in the Constitution the authority for the bill. Neither of those proposals, as simple, basic, and rational as could be, a junior in high school social studies could understand them. Neither of those has seen the light of day. Neither of them ever makes it to a committee for hearing. But there may be some hope, because you could have said the same thing about his proposal to audit the Fed 10 years ago. Now it has passed the House of Representatives. What will happen in the Senate, I don't know. But his persistence has caused the American public to be aware of these things and caused the public to pressure power-hungry members of Congress occasionally to do the right thing.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, as a constitutional expert, as a former judge, reading over the bill and over the subsections, there's so many things that are unconstitutional. And then there's also deception. Even the AP admits this doesn't protect people with with already existing conditions with children.
That is the one that Mrs. Pelosi and company are stumbling over this morning, Alex, because they promised Democrats, and the Democrats promised their constituents, that children with pre-existing conditions would be covered immediately.